Let's see here. Okay, so I am going to attempt to wrap my Neanderthal brain around Webpack module configuration. Now, it's fairly, that's not what I'm going to say. Like I say, it's simple. There's a lot to it. It's a pretty cool concept in Webpack. It came out as officially released in Webpack 5. It was in the betas for Webpack 5 and stuff. You can try it out. There's a few blog posts out there about it, but basically what it lets you do is it's really suited for mono repos, and it will let you like load or share code among different projects in the same same repo, I should say. Not like GitHub repo, but like the same project, right? So there's some good documentation on here about it, but I didn't really grasp what was happening based on the doc here. Maybe I'm just really dumb, and I didn't use any Webpack overrides or anything when I was learning this or trying to figure it out. But there are some blog posts about it out there that talk about it, and they all kind of, I don't know who wrote the first sample for this, because all of these blog posts I've seen kind of use the same sample. They all use React, and basically you have one app that is going to display some UI, and you have another app that creates the components for the UI, like buttons or images or headers, whatever. And the main app is going to consume those components from the secondary app, and you just need to run them at the same time. Good for like micro front ends, which I don't really use myself, right? I think I don't know what this looks like in production, right? Because in all the samples they have going to like they're pointing to ports on localhost. So when this goes to production, I mean, are these just like subdomains or folders or directories? I don't really know. I'm sure someone else out there does. But basically the idea here is, for example, app 1 is this is gonna consume a component, and it's gonna lazy load it. So that's one thing you need to know when you're working with these with module federation. It's essentially like lazy loading everything, right? Everything's asynchronous, so there is no like you just import at the top of your page. You're actually going to dynamically import everything via this kind of method here, dynamic imports. So they use React Lazy, of course, for the React samples. And that's app 1, and then app 2, they show what the Webpack configs and everything look like. So I won't go into detail of this particular sample, just to give you an idea of kind of how it works. It's a cool idea. And the idea here is the fact that you break down or minimize the code duplication you're going to have, right? And there's this shared option, which I don't know if I'm really doing it right or if I completely understand, but basically it'll make sure if you have like if both your apps depend on React, it's not going to load React twice, for example, right? I think that's what it does. Like I said, I don't know all this well. I'm learning it, and I just figured I would do a video to kind of show a simple way I was able to kind of get this working for you. So let me go ahead and start this off. First thing I'm going to need to do is create a folder, right? Starting from scratch, I told you. Now we'll call this Fed Modules. Let's go to Fed Modules. I'm going to make 2 folders in here. I'll make an app and API. All right. So now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and knit this one. So this isn't required. I just have the mono repo will have its own node modules, and then each individual one is also going to have its own node modules. Just go in there. Also, a lot of the samples I saw seem to assume that you're going to use Yarn and Yarn workspaces and stuff. And honestly, I don't know Yarn very well, so that I can show you this in kind of an easier way. I'll do everything inside VS Code. App. So what do I actually, you know what? Because the app's a consumer, let's go and do the API one. Right. So because I'm gonna do some stuff here. All right. So basically what I want to do here is what are my dependencies going to be? I'm going to install I'm going to go and do this with the ArcGIS JavaScript API. So I'll install ArcGIS Core. I'm going to install the HTML. I guess it'd be good if I install Webpack too. Plugin. Let's install Webpack. Webpack CLI and Webpack dev server. I'm not a Yarn user, which is why I'm not using the Yarn workspaces, which seems to be where most of the blog posts I have seen kind of say that you should do. Okay, so I've installed that in the API folder. I've got that here. Let's go ahead and let's make a Webpack config. Let's make a source directory, and let's make a public directory. I'm gonna have an HTML template that I'll copy in there. Let's go ahead and type in. Hold on. There it is. Source. That's something old. Index.js. Okay, so my source file, this index.js, what I'm going to do here. So what I could do here, say I'm working with the ArcGIS API for JavaScript, which is if you don't know, is a JavaScript mapping library you can use to display maps in your applications, right? It's a pretty large library, but once you do your build and everything like that, it's only load what you need, kind of a deal. So what I want to do here is I want to create some helper functions that are going to create the map for me, for example, right? Do all the work creating the map and maybe adding some widgets or something like that. That way I can just kind of do it. So, oops, I'm in the wrong. What did I do? I think I did this all wrong. Hold on. I don't need a public folder. I'm in API. Delete that. Let's export an async function here. And this function is going to be called create map. And this map is going to take a ID. I think I'm doing TypeScript. I'm not. This is going to be a string here. All right. And it's going to be a web map ID. I'm going to actually do that. Just so. This is just for me because I'm not using TypeScript right now. I don't want to go through the steps of setting that up here. Okay, so I'll use that config in a moment here. But first thing I want to do is I want to do a dynamic import of some stuff. It's going to be equal to a wait promise to all. Technically, I think I can just dump all this at the very top. I don't think I need dynamic imports here, but you know what? Do what I want, right? Import ArcGIS core web map. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and import that ArcGIS core views map view. Okay, so I bring in the map view, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a map. So these return default because they're dynamic imports, and I want to rename it to web map. Same goes here. So default, just name it to map view. Now I can say const map is equal to new web map. And this is now going to take an object that's going to have a portal item. And that portal item is going to have an ID. And we'll just pass the ID and get into it. Now what I can do is I can just go ahead and create let's take an ID and let's take a container. And this container is going to be HTML element. Okay, so now I'm going to say that I'm going to have a new view. So const view is equal to new map view. And that map view is going to take my map and my container. And let's return the view. All right, so that's just a little helper function. So take that. Now I mentioned before about this Esri config. You need to set the assets path for this. Okay, so when this app, this API application runs, the application is going to be running under a different URL than the source application that is consuming it, right? So when the API runs, it needs to know where to find its assets, which is going to include things like the CSS, images, fonts, the worker files, which is super important. So there are workers in the API. It has a whole worker framework that it works with. And you don't need to build the workers. The workers are pre-built, and they live inside the assets folder. So you need to tell the assets, the API itself, where to find them if they're not in the default expected place, which would be just, this is like what the default looks like, right? But since we're running on a different port from the source app, we need to tell it where to find them. So, okay, so that is the API part of the app. So now we need to set up the Webpack config to understand what to do with the Webpack plugin. I don't need the next version. I just need the current one. Oh, I forgot. It's install serve and the Cursor Webpack plugin. All right, so these are all the everything I'm going to use, right? So I need path. I think I use path. HTML Webpack plugin, the ArcGIS Webpack plugin, module federation plugin from Webpack, so we can do our federation, cursor, and then Webpack itself. And that function gets the environment and the arguments. And this is going to be the config. Okay, so now the entry. I only have one entry, but I like doing the arrays anyway. It's going to be in source index.js, right? So that's the entry file. And then I'm going to go and copy what I've got here for the output and the mode and dev server. Okay, I'll just explain it. So this, when we run the dev server, it's going to be running on localhost 3001. That's going to be the path for it. I'm going to want to write to disk. This is just going to be faster. And when I'm using the dev server, when I'm using it, I also want to allow cores. Now, I don't know if this is always necessary. I did find I had to do this in the dev server because I would get some cores errors if I did it. I did see this in the samples for the module federation that I saw. So maybe it's just something about my app. I don't really know. But that's my story and I'm sticking to it. So the next bit is just going to be the optimization because I kind of want to optimize this, right? So basically I just got I'm going to minimize, it's going to be true or false based on if I'm running production or not. In dev mode, I don't care. I don't care about being that. And then split chunks is just going to be chunks all. Okay, now the plugins bit, right? So I want to use the ArcGIS plugin. And all the ArcGIS plugin is going to do is make sure to copy the assets for me. It'll take care of that part. It's also going to make sure it doesn't copy over like the SAS files because I don't need those at runtime. If I were using SAS in my app, I could build with those SAS files, but I'm not. Not today, people. So the module federation plugin, and this has some interesting arguments. So basically, I'm creating a library here in this sub app of my mono repo, my micro front end. Ah, there you go. That's what it was, micro front end. I knew there was a name for it. So the name is going to be ArcGIS. That's the library I'm exposing. It's a library. And this is another object. The type is going to be var. I forget what this means. Forgive me. I'm sure someone knows, but I don't. And then I have to type the name again. At least in everything I saw, I had to. So now I'm going to give this a name. And the name itself isn't really important. But all of the stuff I saw called a remote entry.js. Like I said, I don't think it's important what you name it. You just need a name that you can reference in the app that is going to consume these federated modules that you are creating. Oh yeah, there was this little trick I saw. So if you want to get aggressive on the shared code so that everything is shared that this app uses, you can do this little bit here where you get the list of dependencies in your package JSON. And then on the shared side, when I come down here, and I provide the shared array of dependencies between this app and the parent app, I guess, you can do 3, right? Yeah. You can do this and just spread them out. Why did I do that? Yes, because I did that. That's why. I can't spell. And then I want ArcGIS core, of course, to be shared across both apps. Like I said, I don't think I need this. This is one of those areas of the federated modules that I am unclear on, because I don't know if I really need to have it here if I know I'm not going to use ArcGIS core in another one of my apps that's going to consume this module. But it's safe to do it. And then the singleton true, as far as I know, just make sure it's the only one. This ArcGIS core library that's in here, it's the only one that gets used, as far as I could tell. That's what that means. So, okay, so that's our Webpack config. Then my package JSON, I need a couple of scripts in here, which I'm going to put. It's, again, I'm copy pasting these scripts because I've done this before, and I'm really crossing my fingers this works. It worked for me before, but I did not test it today. All right, so yeah, I've got an npm start, I've got a build, and then serve. So if I want to do the build, then serve the build. So real quickly, let me just run npm start, make sure it builds, and that no errors pop up here. All right, so okay, compiled with warnings. I don't care about the warning. Okay, now to the consuming application, which is where the Webpack config stuff is going to get more interesting, because here we defined basically a library with the module federation plugin. Now we need to define the consumer of our library, the parent package or project or whatever we're going to do, which is going to be app. All right, so app is where I'm going to pretty much do the same thing. Touch Webpack config. Make derp. I need that public. Spelled that wrong. I need that public folder here, and I need a source folder here. Now Rouch. Touch source index.js. Let me go to the public folder real quick. Index.html. The HTML file is going to have a view div. This is where the map is going to be shown. I'm going to have the CSS files pointing here, and then this is where I'm going to be loading the remote entry.js file that I defined in the sub app, app number 2, the library app that I'm going to be consuming here. That I need to point to that URL, localhost 3001/remoteentry.js. That's where it's gonna live, right? So that's what the HTML file is going to do. So in my source file, index.html file, I'm going to go ahead and export a default async function called init. What I want to do here is I think this is correct. Man, you know what? I probably really should set the Webpack config first, or else this is not going to make sense. So let's do that. Sorry. Yeah, because like I said, the Webpack config is where the bulk of this work is going to happen. So let me go ahead and bring this in. There's our dev server. Back that one. And then, okay, so here's where we do things, right? So now we're going to do plugins again. I don't need to do anything with the ArcGIS Webpack plugin or loading ArcGIS core in here, because that's all inside of the library micro front-ended app portion that we're doing. So I'm going to do a new module federation plugin here. Name is just going to be app. The library, again, these details like the library type and stuff, like I said before, these are things I'm not clear on, and I'm sure it's super clear somewhere in some documentation, but I went through lots of GitHub issues and blog posts to just kind of figure out where I'm at now. So now, this is where this differs from the library part of our app. We're going to add a remotes object in here, remotes option to the Federation plugin. And these remotes are going to be the names. Let's go bring this one up here. All right, so if you remember here, this is for the API one. We gave it a name called ArcGIS. So we have an ArcGIS, and it's going to coincide with the... So in our app, we call it ArcGIS. It's also going to be called ArcGIS over here. In my app, I could call it, mapping. It doesn't matter. If that mapping is going to map to the ArcGIS name of the library here. I will just keep them the same because why not? Okay, and then again, we're going to do that whole shared depths thing that we did before. Now, we look at the index HTML I had here. Just notice I got this federated URL and this CSS URL. This is just so I can pass some values in here. So we're going to go ahead and do the HTML Webpack plugin, passing some values to it. The template is in public, index.html. And we're going to, give me a second here, we're going to go ahead and pass the federated URL and the CSS URL. So remember, this is running on 3001. We create a remote entry JS file, so we need to reference that URL here. And then my CSS is being copied over here to an assets folder under 3001. So I want to reference that CSS here, and it'll get injected in here, and my app will be happy. Keep pushing the wrong button. Will be happy doing everything it needs to do. So in the library file, the library's Webpack Config, I did forget something here. So yes, I have a file name called remote entry JS, but I have to tell it what am I exposing, right? I have to expose the functions, modules, or whatever. I have to expose whatever I want to share from this library to the parent libraries or the users of this application, right? So let's just call it API, and this is going to come from source index, like so. And I think that's all I gotta do. Right, so we're doing the mapping. So now I can reference this. Oops, the wrong one. I can reference ArcGIS API, and it's going to be able to reference this create map function over here. So now I can get the create map function over here. So now I can find my web map ID. So I'll just call it like this. I'll call it ID is going to be equal to that. My container is going to be equal to, now the API, the ArcGIS API for JavaScript will take just the name, which is going to be view div, which is the ID, oops, of the root here. But I'm going to assume that, you want to be very specific. So I can do get element. I misspelled document, didn't I? Yeah, I did. By ID, view div. Const view is going to be equal to await create map ID and container. Yeah, okay, so that was quite a bit. So basically what we did is we've defined this create map function. In our Webpack config, we defined the name of our library, ArcGIS, which is here, maps to here. And we defined a module in ArcGIS called API, which is here, being exposing the source index file here. I can call this anything I want, doesn't matter. I'm just telling it what I want to expose here. You can expose as much as you want. So in this package JSON, so on Webpack serve, yeah, so we've got that web start, build, serve. What does this one look like? That's start, build, serve. So it's 3001 at 3002. Okay, we are good there. This took me a while to figure out, and I think this is where Yarn would shine in this particular case, to want to start them all at once. I've got all these different build scripts. I have one to start app 1, and I've got one to start the API here, and I've got other ones. Let me fix all these. Then I've got, yeah, so there's app 1, there's app 2, and I've got build scripts to do them. I've got serve scripts for them, and start is going to run app 1 and app 2. So let's try. Cross my fingers, save this. Let's go up to the root now, and let's do an npm start. Oh, something didn't work. Wait, what? That's a problem when you got so many with this thing, is trying to keep track of what's what. So, okay, so this is the app, and the app is running on 3002. Oh, geez. Yeah, I'm sorry. I had just done those stupid promise at all from before, and yeah, sorry, my bad. This should object destructuring. I don't slap me now. Yeah, it is loading that create map function from my secondary app and being used in this main app, which means I could have multiple apps running inside this mono repo, right? All referencing the same federated modules, which are exposing functions to create maps for me, and just use that over and over again everywhere I need to go. Let's see here. So yeah, localhost 3001, that's where all the library files are coming from, but then my main bundle is in 3002. Right? And everything else is coming from the 3001 port. And once I built this, of course, I'm not going to be loading so many JavaScript files. I'll just be loading a few. One thing to keep in mind, though, I hadn't really thought of until I did it. If I just want to expose each of these, say I just export this import of the web map and export this map view, and maybe export some other libraries and then just consume them, whatever reason. If I want to do it that way, it's like doing a dynamic import on every single import in here. You don't want to do it that way. You want to create some sort of functions that do something for you, that return back something that you can use in your main app. Because let this do all the work. Let this one consume all the modules and stuff. Because you always have to, the nature of federated modules, you always have to do dynamic imports to load them, which is kind of the idea, right? Like I said, I still don't fully understand it. I'm not going to pretend to fully grasp all of it. This was kind of my simple way to kind of wrap my head around everything. But as you can see, when I have to do this like bunch of build scripts and stuff to get it to work normally, I don't know if there's like a better npm way to do this. But like I said, I've seen people use Yarn and Yarn workspaces to kind of make this easier to do, but I'm not familiar with that. I don't know Lerna. This was actually better for me to just kind of get going and do and build an app with it. So try out the Webpack module federation stuff. If I'm completely wrong here, if I did something completely stupid, please let me know. Reach out on Twitter at odonet and hit me up. Try not to be mean, but if you've got some tips and tricks or some ideas, I'd love to hear them. I just want to learn more, right? Because I think this module federation is really cool, and I want to get good at it like anything else. So let me know how it goes. Thanks a lot. Late.